America is back and open for business. That is the message from President Donald Trump to the global elite at their annual playground in Davos, Switzerland. Let's watch.
My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. We're bringing them down very substantially, even from the original Trump tax cuts. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff, differing amounts, but a tariff which will direct hundreds of billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars into our treasury to strengthen our economy and pay down debt.
President Trump beamed into the annual meeting Thursday to lay out some of his economic vision. He also called out the CEO of Bank of America for allegedly not doing business with conservatives. Let's watch that.
And by the way, speaking of you, and you've done a fantastic job, but I hope you start opening your bank to conservatives, because many conservatives complain that the banks are not allowing them to do business within the bank, and that included a place called Bank of America. They don't take conservative business. And I don't know if the regulators mandated that because of Biden or what, but you and Jamie and everybody, I hope you're going to open your banks to conservatives, because what you're doing is wrong.
In his parting remarks, Trump said this about the Paris Climate Agreement.
I terminated the ridiculous and incredibly wasteful Green New Deal. I call it the Green New Scam. Withdrew from the one-sided Paris Climate Accord and ended the insane and costly electric vehicle mandate. We're going to let people buy the car they want to buy. I declared a national energy emergency, and that's so important, national energy emergency, to unlock the liquid gold under our feet and pave the way for rapid approvals of new energy infrastructure.
So I think that Trump has the kernel of a point here, which he is exaggerating as he is prone to do. I don't know if you read this the same way I did, but I assume what he's referring to is the tendency of banks to have these so-called ESG policies, which sometimes they decide to not do things because they do or do not align with their values. And at one time, Bank of America, who he was targeting there, said that they were not going to finance the businesses of gun manufacturers who manufactured assault-style weapons other than for law enforcement or for the military. And they said they weren't going to do that, and then they subsequently backed away from that to some extent, more recently saying that they would look at things on a case-by-case basis. I think there are very legitimate questions about that, because I was thinking around this point, and I don't want to blabber on for ages here, but I think that there is a problem with liberals arguing against the Bank of America position here, because liberals typically argue that if you're hanging out your shingle in the public sphere, you can't then you can't refuse people service based upon your views. And we've seen that happen on the left, that the argument being made about, say, gay marriage or same-sex marriage and bakers making cakes and all that. The liberals say, no, you can't do that. You can't discriminate on the basis of the view being expressed. So that is one thing. Where he gets the idea that they won't, what was the quote? Bank of America won't take conservative business. That seems a very exaggerated claim, if indeed what he's talking about is the gun manufacturer stuff.
Yeah, so the gun manufacturers is definitely part of the criticism of Bank of America, but there actually are a lot of examples of individual conservatives specifically being told that they're no longer allowed to bank there, with getting their accounts frozen and in some cases not being able to access their money anymore. So a few examples of this would be Eric Prince, of course, the founder of Blackwater Private Security, MMA fighter Tara LaRosa, John Eastman, who was one of the lawyers for Trump during the 2020 election fraud cases, and look, I'll throw it out, Nick Fuentes. I don't like the guy. I don't much agree with anything that he says, but the idea that he shouldn't be able to have a bank account because he expresses views that some find repugnant, I think is completely wrong. Nigel Farage has been debanked in the UK. And Melania and Barron Trump. Melania said in her recent memoir she wouldn't name the bank, but she said they both had their accounts closed by a bank too. And they often hide under the idea that these people are bringing some kind of risk to the bank. They'll say, well, if we suspect someone of money laundering, for example, or using the money for something illegal, then we will remove them from our platform to protect ourselves from potential criminal liability or from a PR damage. But they never provide any evidence that any of these people are engaged or even suspected of being engaged in any of those activities. And they often don't tell these people why their accounts were removed.
Well, I mean, Bank of America completely pushes back on the idea that it punishes people for their political views. Now, in some of these cases, these are clearly people who have been, of one kind or another, under criminal investigation, correct? I mean, John Eastman was certainly charged, was he not?
Tara LaRosa wasn't.
I'm not sure. I don't know anything about her.
Yeah, she's just an MMA fighter who puts conservative tweets on.
I mean, Bank of America say that they have an enormous number of accounts in the hundreds of thousands of faith-based organizations of all kinds, and that there is no suggestion, because what would the actual motivation be on the part of a bank to say to someone who is conservative or liberal, purely on the basis of your views, we're not banking?
According to Mark Andreessen, he talked about this on Joe Rogan podcast recently, that they have evidence that the government has threatened regulation on banks who don't remove certain accounts from their platforms.
But that is to say, I mean, to say that is true, that I'm sure the government does indeed say certain accounts, but those certain accounts, to get back to your original point, are accounts where it is claimed that there is some suggestion of money laundering.
That's the cover that they give.
Well, is it? I mean,
Yeah.
we don't actually know that that's the cover, other than, well, we don't know it's not a legitimate concern. You're assuming that the conservative case is just correct because they say so, which I don't think we should
I think
assume.
it's incumbent on the bank to provide evidence that they are suspected of that, though. If you're going to remove someone's money from them, take their money away, then the burden of proof is on the bank.
Well, you're not taking their money away. You're taking the capacity to deposit their money.
Well, not
with
necessarily.
them
In some cases, these people weren't able to access their money for months until they were finally sent a check in the mail. That entire time, they're not getting interest.
That's not true. I'm not sure.
What?
That the people weren't able to access their bank.
For multiple months until they got a check in the mail. They were not told when they were going to get their money. In the meantime, they don't have access to it. They can't get interest on it. I mean...
But I still don't see where are you getting that from, for example, the suggestion that they can't access their money?
They've said it themselves, these people who have been debanked.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and it's not an uncommon practice. I mean, look at what happened in Canada to the Freedom Convoy, right? They were offered millions of dollars in donations to GoFundMe from people throughout the United States and Canada, and that money was seized by the Canadian government. I don't think it's beyond the pale to suggest that similar things could be happening in the United States.
But, well, I just think that there is a very separate point between the ESG policies, which I think are hard to defend because they are biasing the provision of public service on the basis of someone's activities, and unverified allegations that people have been targeted whenever the bank adamantly denies that, and there is no conceivable, plausible motivation for the bank to deny swathes of conservatives or swathes of people with any other political
If I may just
opinion.
point out one more additional piece of evidence, which is that multiple states' attorneys general sent letters to Bank of America and other banking groups last year over the canceling of accounts of Christian ministry groups. So Bank of America says, oh no, we have tons of faith-based groups on our platform.
Bank of America says that one of those groups was one which, without saying anything about it or giving any advance notice, branched out from its Christian work to do debt collection agency work, which Bank of America said was not covered.
Well,
was not
one
part
of which,
the
but they
agreement.
canceled multiple accounts, and I don't...
Well, I can't go through all of them off the top of my head. I'm just
Right.
saying to you that the claim that they blanketly cancelled faith-based groups is one that they adamantly deny and have provided evidence as to why that is not the case in at least one of the cases.
Well, I don't think it has to be a blanket case that they've denied all faith-based groups. As long as several of them are getting caught in a dragnet, then that's suggestive of a biased policy that inappropriately
It's not
flags
necessarily.
conservative-leaning groups or individuals more than left-leaning groups.
We don't know, though. If it's isolated cases, we don't know that it hasn't happened to people of different political persuasion.
Well, I would also point out to you that FinCEN and the FBI had also facilitated back-channel discussions, this is according to a report from the House Judiciary Committee, with banks, telling them to flag certain transactions because these people could potentially be engaged in illegal conduct. And these transactions included keywords such as MAGA, Trump, purchases of Bibles and other religious texts, firearms-related items, and even shopping at Cabela's or Dick's Sporting Goods.
It also included, I believe, pornography, pawn shops, and various other things that have no ostensible ideological purpose. We have been told to wrap. That was a spirited discussion. Up next, President Trump says he will release all classified files about the assassinations of Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy.